On what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, Lily Matthews faced the ultimate betrayal, left at the altar by the man she thought loved her unconditionally. Publicly humiliated and heartbroken, Lily retreats from the world, her self-esteem shattered. But in the quiet solitude of her reflection, she begins an unexpected journey of growth and self-discovery. What does it take to rebuild after the deepest wounds? And can love bloom again, not from others, but from within? Embracing the unveiled self is a story of courage, resilience, and finding beauty in the broken moments that shape us. Will Lily's journey lead her to rediscover her worth and embrace the woman she was always meant to be? Turn the page and let her story unfold. Hi guys, I'm Caitlin, and this is the Stories of Echoes channel where I tell my stories, and I hope you enjoy every second. Lily Matthews stood before the full-length mirror in her childhood bedroom, a vision in white lace and satin. Her reflection stared back at her, a mixture of excitement and apprehension swirling in her hazel eyes. The spring sunlight filtered through the gossamer curtains, casting a soft glow on her carefully styled auburn hair. "Oh, honey, you look absolutely perfect," Mrs. Matthews exclaimed, her eyes brimming with tears as she adjusted Lily's veil. "Ryan won't be able to take his eyes off you." Lily forced a smile, but a nagging doubt gnawed at her insides. She thought back to the countless times Ryan had critiqued her appearance, his offhand comments about her fashion choices, her hair, even her hands roughened by hours spent in the garden. She had worked so hard to become the polished, sophisticated woman he wanted, but at what cost? "Thanks, Mom," Lily murmured, smoothing down the front of her dress for the 100th time. She caught sight of her bridesmaids reflected in the mirror, their pastel dresses a stark contrast to the vibrant wildflowers she had initially wanted for her bouquet. Ryan had insisted on classic roses instead. As her mother fussed with the train of her gown, Lily's mind drifted to the early days of her relationship with Ryan. She remembered the thrill of being noticed by the most eligible bachelor in town, the way her heart had raced when he'd first asked her out. But with each passing month, she'd felt herself shrinking, molding herself to fit his idea of the perfect girlfriend and eventually the perfect fiancé. "Lily," Emma's voice broke through her reverie. Her best friend stood in the doorway, a concerned look on her face. "It's time. Are you ready?" Lily took a deep breath, pushing down the butterflies in her stomach. "As I'll ever be," she replied, forcing a bright smile. The short drive to the church passed in a blur of nervous chatter and last-minute adjustments. Before she knew it, Lily was standing at the entrance, her arm linked with her father's. The wedding march began, and she stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Ryan waiting at the altar. He looked impeccable in his tailored tuxedo, his golden hair perfectly coiffed. As Lily drew closer, she searched his face for the love and adoration she'd always dreamed of seeing on her wedding day. Instead, she found something else entirely: hesitation, maybe even regret. Her steps faltered, but her father squeezed her arm reassuringly, urging her forward. As they reached the altar, he placed her hand in Ryan's, and Lily felt a chill run through her at the touch. The minister began the ceremony, his words washing over Lily in a haze. She barely registered the readings, the hymns, her focus entirely on Ryan's increasingly uncomfortable expression. When it came time for the vows, Ryan cleared his throat, his voice ringing out clearly in the hushed church. "Lily," he began, and her heart sank at the tone of his voice. I can't do this." A collective gasp rippled through the congregation. Lily felt as though the ground had dropped out from beneath her feet. "What?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ryan's eyes darted around the church, taking in the shocked faces of their friends and family. "I'm sorry, Lily, but I can't marry you. You're not the woman I thought you were." Lily's vision blurred with tears as Ryan continued, his words cutting deeper with each syllable. "Your obsession with gardening, the dirt under your nails. It's embarrassing. I need someone who can be the perfect wife, someone who fits the image I've worked so hard to cultivate, and that's not you." The church erupted into a cacophony of whispers and exclamations. Lily stood frozen, her bouquet of roses slipping from her numb fingers and scattering across the polished floor. She was vaguely aware of camera flashes going off, capturing her humiliation for posterity. "Lily!" Emma's voice cut through the chaos as her best friend rushed to her side, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulders. "Come on, let's get you out of here." In a daze, Lily allowed Emma to guide her down the aisle, past the gawking faces and pitying looks. The spring sunshine that had seemed so promising earlier now felt harsh and unforgiving as they burst out of the church doors. "I'll kill him," Emma muttered as she ushered Lily into her car. "I swear, Lily, I'll make him pay for this." But Lily barely heard her. Her mind was a whirlwind of memories. Every criticism, every subtle put-down Ryan had ever uttered, suddenly crystallizing into a pattern she'd been too blind to see. The drive back to Lily's childhood home passed in a blur. Once inside, Lily made a beeline for her bedroom, slamming the door behind her. She stood before the mirror once again, but this time she hardly recognized the woman staring back at her. With trembling hands, she began to tear at her dress, ripping away the delicate lace and beading. Each torn seam felt like a step towards liberation, a rejection of the facade she'd built to please Ryan. As scraps of white fabric fluttered to the floor, Lily caught sight of something on her dresser, her mother's latest gardening magazine. The cover featured a vibrant spread of the local community garden, a riot of colors and textures that made her heart ache with longing. Lily traced her finger over the glossy image, remembering the joy she'd once found in coaxing life from the earth, in feeling the sun on her face and the soil between her fingers. For the first time since fleeing the church, she felt a tiny spark of hope ignite in her chest. She met her own gaze in the mirror, taking in her smudged makeup and disheveled hair. The woman looking back at her wasn't the polished, perfect bride she'd tried so hard to be. But maybe, just maybe, she was someone worth getting to know. As the sound of car doors slamming and worried voices drifted up from outside, Lily made a silent promise to herself. She would find her way back to the person she used to be, the girl who didn't care about getting her hands dirty, who found beauty in wildflowers and joy in nurturing growing things. It wouldn't be easy, she knew. The road ahead was uncertain, paved with the wreckage of her shattered dreams and the judgmental whispers of a small town. But as Lily's eyes drifted back to the magazine cover, to the promise of new growth and renewal, she felt the first stirrings of determination. This wasn't the end of her story. It was only the beginning. 3 months had passed since Lily Matthews' world imploded at the altar, and the once vibrant young woman now lived like a ghost in her own life. The curtains in her childhood bedroom remained drawn, shutting out both sunlight and the prying eyes of neighbors. Lily's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, each one a potential minefield of gossip and judgment. Emma Reynolds, ever the steadfast friend, had been Lily's lifeline during this dark period. On a particularly gloomy afternoon, Emma burst into Lily's room, determination etched on her face. "Enough is enough, Lil. We're getting you out of this cave," Emma declared, yanking open the curtains. Lily winced at the sudden brightness. "I've got just the place for you." Despite Lily's protests, Emma managed to coax her friend into presentable clothes and out of the house. As they drove through town, Lily slouched in her seat, painfully aware of the sideways glances from passers-by. "Where are we going?" Lily mumbled, her voice rusty from disuse. "You'll see," Emma replied, with a mischievous glint in her eye. They pulled up to a vacant lot that had been transformed into a lush oasis. Raised beds overflowed with vegetables and flowers, while a quaint greenhouse stood at the far end. A wooden sign proclaimed, "Willowbrook Community Garden." Lily's heart quickened at the sight. It was the very garden she had seen in that magazine months ago, a forgotten dream overshadowed by her recent trauma. As they entered the garden, a tall, sandy-haired man approached them with a warm smile. "Welcome to our little slice of paradise," he said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'm Mark Bennett, the garden coordinator." Lily found herself drawn to Mark's genuine kindness, so unlike the polished charm she had grown accustomed to with Ryan. She introduced herself hesitantly, waiting for the inevitable flicker of recognition and pity. But Mark's expression remained open and welcoming. "We could always use more helping hands," Mark offered. "No experience necessary, just a willingness to get a little dirt under your nails." Before Lily could formulate an excuse, Emma chimed in. "She'd love to. Lily's got a real green thumb." And so began Lily's journey back to herself, one handful of soil at a time. At first, she came to the garden only when she was sure it would be empty, relishing the quiet company of growing things. But gradually, she found herself lingering, chatting with other gardeners, and even laughing at Mark's terrible plant puns. As spring blossomed into summer, so too did Lily's confidence. She poured her energy into nurturing a small plot of heirloom tomatoes and fragrant herbs, finding solace in the simple act of cultivating life. Mark was often nearby, offering advice or simply a comforting presence. One balmy evening, as Lily was tending to her plants, she overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. "Did you hear? Ryan's back in town," a voice whispered. "Apparently, he's been asking about Lily." Lily's hands trembled as she gripped her trowel tighter. The mere mention of Ryan's name brought a flood of painful memories and self-doubt. As if summoned by her thoughts, Ryan appeared at the garden gate the very next day. He looked as polished as ever in his designer suit, utterly out of place among the lush greenery. "Lily," he called out, his voice a mixture of concern and condescension, "I've been worried about you." Lily straightened up, acutely aware of the dirt smudges on her cheeks and the worn gardening gloves on her hands. For a moment, she felt that old urge to shrink herself, to become the porcelain doll Ryan had always wanted her to be. But then she caught sight of Mark watching from across the garden, his brow furrowed with concern. In that instant, Lily realized how far she had come. "I'm fine, Ryan," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "What do you want?" Ryan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've been thinking, Lily. Maybe we were too hasty. We could try again, if you just made a few changes." The old Lily might have jumped at this chance for redemption. But as she stood there, surrounded by the fruits of her labor, she felt a surge of strength. "No, Ryan," she said firmly. "I don't want to change. Not anymore." Ryan's face darkened. "You can't be serious. You're choosing this." He gestured dismissively at the garden. "Over what we had." Before Lily could respond, a commotion near her plot drew their attention. A group of teenagers had knocked over her carefully tended plants, laughing as they ran off. Lily's heart sank as she surveyed the damage. Months of work lay in ruins, tender stems broken, and fruits crushed. It felt like a cruel metaphor for her life. Just as she was starting to bloom, everything was destroyed again. For a moment, Lily considered retreating to the safety of her room, hiding away from the world that seemed determined to break her. But then she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We'll fix this," Mark said softly. "Together." As Lily looked into Mark's eyes, she saw not pity or judgment, but genuine care and respect. She glanced back at Ryan, who stood awkwardly to the side, clearly unsure of how to handle this less than perfect situation. In that moment, Lily made her choice. She turned away from Ryan and knelt beside her damaged plants, her hands already working to salvage what she could. "You're right, Mark," she said, a small smile playing on her lips. "We will." As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Lily realized that she had found something far more valuable than the perfect image she once sought. She had found herself, roots and all, ready to grow through whatever cracks life might bring. The morning sun peeked through Lily's curtains, casting a warm glow across her bedroom. She sat up, her fingers tracing the edge of a flyer announcing the community garden showcase. A mixture of excitement and anxiety fluttered in her chest as she contemplated the day ahead. "You've got this, Lily," she whispered to herself, drawing strength from the newfound confidence that had taken root over the past few months. As she made her way to the garden, the town seemed to buzz with anticipation. Whispers and curious glances followed her, but instead of shrinking away, Lily straightened her shoulders. The garden had become her sanctuary, and today she would share its beauty with everyone. Mark was already there, arranging chairs and setting up displays. His face lit up when he saw her, a smile spreading across his features. "Morning, Lily." "Ready for the big day?" She nodded, her own smile growing. "As ready as I'll ever be. Thanks for believing in me, Mark." Together, they put the finishing touches on the showcase. Lily's hands moved with certainty as she arranged flowers and adjusted signs, her passion for gardening evident in every gesture. As volunteers and early visitors began to arrive, she felt a sense of pride blooming within her. Emma burst onto the scene, her arms full of homemade refreshments. "Lily, this place looks amazing." She set down her load and gave her friend a tight hug. "I knew you could do it." As the showcase began, Lily found herself swept up in conversations about soil composition, plant varieties, and sustainable gardening practices. Her eyes shone as she shared her knowledge, no longer afraid to let her true self shine through. Midway through the event, a hush fell over the crowd. Lily looked up to see Ryan making his way through the garden, his presence like a storm cloud on a sunny day. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the confrontation. "Lily," Ryan said, his voice dripping with false charm, "I see you're still playing in the dirt. Don't you think it's time to grow up?" The old Lily might have wilted under his gaze, but not anymore. She stood tall, her voice clear and strong. "This isn't playing, Ryan. This is living. This is who I am, and I'm proud of it." Ryan's face twisted into a sneer. "You could have had everything with me. Instead, you choose this?" He gestured dismissively at the garden. "No, Ryan," Lily replied, her voice steady. "With you, I had nothing but a hollow shell of myself. Here, I have everything that truly matters." A murmur of approval rippled through the onlookers. Emma stepped forward, placing a supportive hand on Lily's shoulder. Mark moved closer, his presence a silent pillar of strength. Ryan's eyes darted between them, realizing he was outnumbered. With a final scoff, he turned and stalked away, leaving Lily feeling lighter than she had in years. As the showcase continued, Lily found herself drawn to the makeshift stage. It was time for her speech. Taking a deep breath, she stepped up to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice trembling slightly before finding its strength. A few months ago, I thought my life was over. I had lost myself trying to be someone I wasn't. But here, in this garden, I found my way back. She gestured to the flourishing plants around her. These flowers and vegetables, they don't try to be anything other than what they are. They grow towards the sun, not caring what anyone thinks of them, and that's what I've learned to do. Lily's eyes found Mark in the crowd, drawing courage from his encouraging smile. We all have the power to bloom, to grow into our authentic selves. It's not always easy, and sometimes we need a little nurturing, but the results are beautiful. As she finished her speech, the garden erupted in applause. Lily felt tears prick her eyes, overwhelmed by the support and acceptance washing over her. The rest of the showcase passed in a blur of congratulations and heartfelt conversations. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Lily found herself alone with Mark. "You were incredible today," he said softly, his eyes filled with admiration. Lily smiled, a blush coloring her cheeks. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mark. You saw me when I couldn't see myself." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the last rays of sunlight dance across the leaves. Mark's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. "Lily," he said, turning to face her, "I've never met anyone quite like you. Your passion, your kindness, your strength, you're extraordinary." Her heart raced as Mark leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a tender kiss. It felt like coming home, like the final piece of a puzzle sliding into place. As they parted, Lily's smile was radiant. "So, what's next for you?" Mark asked, his arm wrapped comfortably around her waist. Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I was thinking of starting some gardening classes for the local kids. Share the joy, you know." Mark nodded, his smile matching hers. "I think that's a wonderful idea, and I'd love to help if you'll have me." "Always," Lily replied, leaning into his embrace. As they walked through the garden, planning future projects and sharing dreams, Lily felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced her fears, embraced her true self, and found love, not just with Mark, but with herself. Like the flowers surrounding them, she had weathered the storm and emerged stronger, ready to face whatever life had in store. In the fading light of day, Lily Matthews stood tall, rooted in self-acceptance and blooming with possibilities. Her journey of growth had only just begun, and she couldn't wait to see what would flourish next. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. We bring you a new story every day, and your support means the world to us. Share your thoughts in the comments and let us know what you think. See you in the next story. Stay inspired and take care.